Welcome back to another Ret Paladin video. Verabin here. Today we're going to be looking at 5 reasons why you need to take a Ret Paladin to Karazhan. So we just started seeing the beta raid testing happening, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm seeing a wave of purple. All I'm seeing is purple. I'm seeing Warlocks, I'm seeing Warlock pets, and I'm seeing Shaman. I'm seeing Shaman as well. So, however, I think these raids are missing out on a lot because they're not bringing a Ret Paladin. So stick around. We're going to look at 5 reasons why you need to take a Ret Paladin with you to Karazhan. Let's go. Alright, so reason number 1 is that Ret Paladins actually don't need a really strong kind of specific raid comp to do really competitive DPS. So you really just need an enhancement shaman. And because there are so many shaman and so many raids like to bring shaman for bloodlust, you're going to have plenty of enhancement shamans available. So that's not going to be a problem to have a really good raid comp that's going to allow you to excel as a Ret Paladin. Number 2, Ret Paladins bring some really good raid sort of emergency healing and things like Lay on Hands, which does have a pretty long cooldown, Blessing of Protection, which can be used on things like Morose to remove a bleed, and our own Bubble to remove another bleed on Morose, and then to kind of cheese other mechanics that are on certain fights. And you can also bring a Cleanse to magic, poison, and disease. One of the more obvious reasons why you should bring a Ret Paladin is 2 things, Blessings and Judgments. So Blessings and Judgments are 2 of the most versatile things that Ret Paladins are going to bring to a raid. And when we look at Blessings, they're really going to be really good for melee heavy comps. You're going to be able to give those melee DPS either Salvation or Might, which are going to reduce their threat or increase their damage depending on where they're at. And because melee only need 110% threat to pull aggro, it's actually kind of a concern in TBC, especially early on, or if your tank is inexperienced, that you may pull aggro from them. So they're going to pull aggro a little bit faster than a caster is going to. Now for caster heavy raids, you're still going to have to worry about that salvation, so that's going to be important for them. And you can also give them Blessing of Kings or Blessing of Wisdom even to help with their mana, so they don't have to worry about mana consumables as well. So you're going to assist with caster heavy raids as well. Healers are going to love you when you give them that Blessing of Wisdom as well. It's going to give them just a lot of passive mana regeneration over the course of a few minute fight. It's really going to add up to have that kind of passive mana regeneration. As far as judgments go, you can definitely get away with using your Seal of the Crusader and judging that, but your raid is probably going to like you a lot more if you use Judgment of Light, which is going to give tons of passive healing to the raid. Or if you have a caster heavy team, using Judgment of Wisdom is going to feed a ton of mana back into your team. Now, if you're going to run 2 healers, having Judgment of Wisdom and Blessing of Wisdom on the 2 healers that you have is going to be really helpful to them, because it's going to feed them tons of mana back and they'll be able to just pump heals throughout the fights. Another cool thing about Paladins is that because we have a tank spec and a healer spec and a DPS spec, almost every single piece of gear that drops is usable for Ret Paladins. So it's not going to be necessarily directly usable for Ret, but if you don't bring, let's say, a Resto Druid and a piece of leather healing gear drops, your Ret Paladin can definitely use that where your Holy Priest cannot. And your Resto Shaman might not really want that leather healing gear, but as an off-spec gear, it's going to be really good for us. So being able to use plate and mail and leather and cloth is actually a really good benefit for your raid, because you'll be able to absorb those pieces of gear that aren't necessarily useful to other people, but you'll be able to stash those away, have those different gear sets available, and your raid will potentially feel like, hey, you're not necessarily wasting that gear. You know, you can always disenchant the gear, but having the gear go to a player and then potentially benefiting one of your off specs can be definitely useful in the long run, especially when we get into 25-man raids where maybe some fights are more melee unfriendly and you want to try out Holy, or maybe there are fights where you really kind of need a prop paladin. You're going into Mount Hydril and you don't have a main prop paladin tank. You can kind of absorb those tank pieces and then eventually later on down the line be able to put those to good use. So having that versatility is going to be really cool. Alright, but last but not least, Paladins are absolutely the scourge of the undead. And believe it or not, Karazhan is full of undead, from the bosses like Morose to tons of the trash packs. It's full of just dead stuff in there, you guys. This is not a living situation in this tower. So it's probably not a surprise if you're aware of the lore of Karazhan. But anyway, we're not going to go into that here. So anyway, as far as Ret Paladins go, we're going to have some really good utility as far as, especially on fights like Moreau's, where you're going to be able to use Turn Evil to fear one of the ads. Now keep in mind, Turn Evil only lasts for 20 seconds. It is on a 30-second cooldown, so it's definitely not as good as Shackle Undead, but if you don't have a priest, then your options for CCing those are going to be pretty limited, and depending on the gearing of your tanks or the experience of your tanks, you may not want to rely on them AoE tanking all that stuff. Paladins also get increased damage because they are able to use things like Holy Wrath and Exorcism on those undead enemies, so you're going to have a little bit of increased damage, especially on AoE situations where Ret Paladins do not do the best. Let me know in the comments below if you're going to bring a Ret Paladin to your first Karazhan raid. Otherwise, please be sure to hash that like button, subscribe for more. See you guys in the next video. Peace. Yeah.